Hello, everybody. Welcome. Can you all hear me all right? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. All right, great. Perfect. Let's see. I'll try to do this from the coffee shop today. Tesla is down 1.3%. Overall markets are up slightly, about 0.5% across the board. Apple, Nvidia are up. Microsoft, Amazon are up slightly. Google, Meta down slightly. Most sectors are up today. AMD down pretty substantially, and Supermicro down about 10%. The yield curve is down a few basis points. 10-year treasury yield is at 4.30. Housing starts and building permits came in higher than expected today. Good sign for housing supply and inflation concerns. Shelter comprises most of the inflation still. Oil prices are at $83 per barrel. Commodities prices have been increasing lately, up about 3% in the last 30 days. That's going to be probably mentioned at the Fed conference call on Wednesday. Omar, how are you?
Hey, good morning. Feeling great.
Good. How is FSD doing for you today?
It's great. A lot of perfect drives. And this is just the beginning. So I'm super excited.
That's great. Let's see if About Tesla wants to come up and give us an update on how the rollout is going. Otherwise, we can talk about the NVIDIA event from yesterday. And I see Wes is in the crowd. If he wants to come up as well, he's welcome. And
Yeah, we
Machine
did
is here
see an
too.
additional rollout of the 12.3
What's on your radar
software.
today?
We did see an additional 12.3 rollout of the software after we talked yesterday, so that was good to see.
So how many people have it now?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. Maybe About Tesla knows.
There he is. About Tesla.
Hi, everyone. I just have a few minutes, so I'll need to go. But a quick update. So we have close to 15% of the eligible cars targeted by now. So there were two waves in the past 24 hours, mostly focused on hardware 4 cars. Slightly expanded the number of states that are getting, but still big states are quite missing right now. There is almost nothing in New York. Ohio didn't get much, and Michigan and some other states are just single-digit counts of cars getting this, while other states like Virginia and Florida are getting quite a few installations. So it's disproportional right now between states, which is kind of interesting. But overall, it's good news that they keep rolling it out. Two waves in 24 hours. That means that there are no major problems. So it's going on. So if they had any like incidents or showstoppers, they would probably not do that. So I think it's all good news, and I expect the rollout to continue.
Thank you about Tesla. Omar, any take on that?
Yes, I mean, sounds about right. I don't usually like to hyperanalyze the rollouts, maybe because I usually don't have to wait for it, but the rollouts are a mysterious and kind of opaque process. You don't really know what they're doing or what's going on behind the scenes. You just sort of have to wait and, whatever they're doing, they just do it. So I think it's exciting to see 12.3 rolling out. As About Tesla said in one of his tweets, the fact that it continued to roll out yesterday shows there's no major showstoppers. There's no sort of point release that's needed here. Obviously, they're working on 12.4, so they're going to be sending that out next. But I mean, this is just the beginning. They've got a great start here. And then Elon replied to one of my tweets last night. He said there's going to be three major updates to FSD coming, each 2 weeks apart. So, when he says 2 weeks, it doesn't actually mean 2 weeks, but the length of a sprint. So we talked about yesterday, could they get back to a more regular 2 week cadence? And he seems to suggest that they could be doing that. But of course, we have to wait and see if 2 weeks is actually 3 weeks or 4 weeks or what it is. But if in 2 weeks from now we get another major update and then we get summon and banish and auto park and all that great stuff, then I'll be pretty happy. By late April/May, we should be 100% completely feature complete at long last. So I think 12.3 is exciting, but it's really just the beginning. This isn't the culmination of everything they've been working for. It's just the beginning in many ways.
What does he mean by it's going to be shining by late April, early May, you think?
Well, he seems to be stopping himself from saying that it's going to be a Robo Taxi this year, which means it's the first year it actually could end up being a Robo Taxi. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen for sure, but it's in the cards as maybe one possible outcome scenario. I'd say maybe I give it a 15% chance or something like that. So probably not going to happen, but with this new architecture, it's more in the cards. So I think, what shining means is just that it's going to be really good. So he's just saying once they get these features out, it's going to be really cool. So, I mean, summon is really disproportionately important. It just was really cool to see FSD beta driving around without a driver for the first time. For other people in the parking lot, other people in the Costco parking lot, wherever you are, to see a car moving around without a driver, I think is going to be kind of mind blowing. So that's going to be a huge improvement. And just being able to make a video where I don't do any driving is going to be pretty cool. I want to go take that Paint It Black video Tesla made in 2016 showing what the cars would be capable of, and actually go and just make that again and show that this is actually now something that they made real, that any car can run. And not just on this one course, but on virtually any course.
Any questions or comments for Omar? Please request to speak. I see Kaz in the audience. If he wants to come up and give us an update on how 12.3 is doing in his routes, is welcome to do so. We can dedicate the first few minutes to the 12.3, and now we can talk about other things as well. Omar, I see you reposted Tesla Mega Packs. I'll pin this at the top too. Tesla Mega Packs post on congrats to Plus Power and the Tesla Autobidder team on landing the #1 spot in the Moto Energy ERCOT rankings with Gambit in 2023. What is this about?
Well, the ERCOT rankings are, obviously the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. So they're essentially looking at different energy storage projects and the value they're delivering to their operators. And they found that on average, the battery energy storage systems earned $196,000 per megawatt per year. And the #1 system, which was actually closer to $300,000 per megawatt per year, was a Megapack in Southeast Texas. So it really speaks to the power of AutoBidder and all the software work the Tesla team has been doing. A lot of people make these utility scale battery packs, but just like in autos, Tesla has significantly better software that differentiates the product. AutoBidder, which allows you to monetize the Megapack sort of autonomously, other sort of features that let you control it over the internet and try different strategies and support different use cases. Like, for example, they have a virtual machine mode where they can make the Megapack act like a fossil fuel plant. So if you have some stuff in your energy infrastructure that's expecting the energy to sort of ramp up gradually rather than coming in all at once, they can make it they can replace a, fossil fuel plant and make it act exactly like it's a fossil fuel plant on the grid. The grid won't know the difference. So they've got all this really great software technology built into the Megapack, and also the ability to combine virtually an infinite number of Megapacks together to make a battery of any size you want. And you can just see the results here. These are independent testing, and they're generating almost 50% more per megawatt compared to the average system.
Yeah, this is really interesting. We should dig into this a little bit more when we get a chance. Because the Megapack says this Megapack project in Southeast Texas demonstrates how much value energy storage can deliver to the grid with optimized performance. On YouTube Live, this is at the top of their screens. On X Spaces, on YouTube Live, in front of their screens, there's a nice graphic with Tesla Megapacks post next to it.
Yeah, did you know that something like more than eight, I think like 80 to 90%, I forgot the exact numbers, but more than 80% of the electricity capacity added in the world last year was renewable, which is kind of crazy. Nuclear, coal, gas, everything else made up less than 20%. So it really is insane when you look at the pace of renewables growth. And this is how we're going to essentially provide that additional electric demand. Everything's moving to electric. Cars are moving to electric. Heat pumps for heating homes. Many people are getting those. Our goal is to really move all energy use onto electricity. So, how are we going to supply that massive increase of demand? How are we going to move the existing demand over to renewables from natural gas or coal or whatever's being used today? Megapacks and other batteries. We need a shit ton of them. If you do the math on how much we need, it's actually crazy. So Lathrop is still ramping up. It's not really at its peak production yet, but it is making some progress. And the revenue recognition's a little delayed. So I think that makes people not sort of see how much revenue this factory is producing until a few quarters later. And the Shanghai factory at this point is still under construction. So I would expect to see probably the business more than double once the Shanghai mega factory comes online in terms of megawatt output.
Yeah. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. What do you think of the China delivery? I'm trying to get a machine up here, but I'm guessing he's eating right now, and he's trying to respect the rules of the space very hard. But maybe we can say a
Yeah,
few things that rub him the wrong way, which usually gets him up here.
they were good numbers. Um, you know, pretty consistent. Not like a blowout number, but a pretty solid number. It's looking like we're tracking to be about 5% below Q1 2023 China deliveries, which isn't too great. Kind of hard to show sales growth if Europe is kind of flat, China's kind of flat. I think the US is doing a little bit better, but it's going to be important that they show some kind of year over year growth. If they can say, okay, we did 422 vehicles last year, but we did 425 vehicles this year, that's very small growth, but at least, okay, they're growing. If they do less vehicles than they did last year, then that's going to be perceived much more negatively.
Yeah, Troy has been pounding the table on deliveries, and I pinned at the top of their screens this post about 10 hours ago. Tesla delivered, he says, 422,875 cars a year ago in Q1 2023. They need to beat that to avoid headlines about negative growth. However, the botched Model 3 Highland upgrade at Fremont factory and flat sales in Europe and China makes this a very challenging quarter. The table shows 2023. And you can see the table here. He's kind of insinuating that his estimate is around that figure for Q1. What do you think? Like, how would you, as an investor, long-term investor in the company, how would you view the year-over-year flat sales?
Well, I view Tesla sales growth as really primarily being driven by new product introductions. When a new product comes out, people want to buy that, and they then wait for the new product sometimes to make their purchasing decision if they can afford to wait. So, for example, with the new Model 3, I think demand for that new Model 3 is very strong. People really love it and they want to buy it. But production isn't there yet, apparently. I mean, I'm not sitting there watching the factory, so I'm trusting guys like Troy, and I'm just basing on how many I've seen, which is some, but they're not all over the place yet, right? When you see them all over the place, that'll be a good sign. So I think the new Model 3 at volume in North America will definitely help drive growth. I think the Cybertruck at volume, if they could supply, let's say, 100,000 units right now or more, I think that would definitely be material for the US market. Model Y, which has really been the growth engine for the company and really more than half of their sales, you have a lot of people waiting for some of the upgrades that came to the Model 3. You don't have to be a Tesla genius or that in tune with the rumor mill to look at the Model 3 and look at the Model Y and say, okay, some of these upgrades are probably going to come to the Y as well. So I think that's probably a headwind to growth for the year as well. But, as an investor, okay, you've got some sort of headwinds related to new product introductions. During the pandemic, they didn't really update their products too much. They focused just on ramping and keeping the existing products in production over introducing new vehicle models like the Cybertruck or the next gen platform. But now they're getting back into launching these new vehicles, Model 3, Cybertruck, eventually the next gen platform, an updated Model Y, also some minor changes to the S and X. So I believe that these changes will actually drive growth in the auto business, but obviously they need to ramp first. So sometimes you kind of have to take the time and update the vehicles to allow that future sales growth to happen, I think.
Machine, welcome.
Well, luckily I am a Tesla analysis genius, Omar, so I know you weren't. I'm here. Model 3 Highland production sucks. Demand is probably okay. And maybe Tesla's slow rolling it partially. Maybe they screwed something up, but partially also because they're like, well, we can't ramp back to full production anyways because the $7,500 tax credit's gone. And while some people are going to want to buy this thing, it might be hard pressed to have something that costs so much and expect the volume throughput to continue as it was last year. The main issue, if Troy is right, is that it's possible that their year over year sales goes negative, which would be not a good narrative. And I'm pretty sure that's why they raised prices on the announced they're going to raise prices on the Model Y in whatever a few weeks to try to pull forward demand so that at least they're year over year positive in delivery growth, which I expect they will achieve so ever so slightly. However, the consequence of that will be a bit lower. Not a bit lower. Earnings are not going to be optimistic, let's say. So I think it really comes down to energy margins for what the narrative could be coming out. My expectation right now is that the earnings report is not going to have a positive outcome.
So how do you see the stock price trending in the next few months?
I was expecting some rebound at some point, which maybe right now, and then definitely, I could say definitely, my best case is that after earnings report, the share price will go down to 140, 150, if not temporarily. And in between that, I don't know what'll happen, when that'll happen. Production deliveries might make people sell off at that point, and then maybe there won't be as much of a bad response to the earnings report. But at some point there, I think simply people can't avoid the poor growth numbers that they'd really have to look ahead until 2025 to construct a growth story again, which I believe is there. But it's going to be hard for people to model out with certainty growth in the automotive component outside of Cybertruck. They're seeing these margins stay low. Interest rates may be staying higher for longer. Used car prices for EVs still going down. It's going to be hard for them to build a model on growth of EVs outside of Cybertruck. And then you have energy. And, those are the more certain factors that people are going to model. So I think there might be a time period where we dip. And then I think it would be a good buy at that time for both automotive reasons and energy. And then to top it off, obviously, the FSD progress.
How is your super micro position doing?
I closed that. I closed it too
When
early.
did you close it? Are you serious? Oh my god.
Well, I was, I closed it. I didn't want to mess with. I mean, I made some money, but I don't know. I don't want to mess with it. With S&P inclusion.
Oh my! Are you serious? Is that why you closed it?
You don't know how the response is going to be timing wise, so I could hold on.
It's already included. It's already included.
No, I understand that. But like Tesla, had a period where when it got included, it also dropped and then began climbing again for another 2 months. And I'm not saying it's going to be the same thing. I'm just saying I'm not trying to time all that. Right now, if I held it through today, I would have definitely sold it today. I know it's down like 25% in 5 days.
I don't think that's correct. I think Tesla ran up. Oh, you mean for 2 weeks?
No,
Right?
there were two periods of Tesla run up. Tesla ran up some, I believe, in the announcement of S&P inclusion until
Right. That was the primary. That was the primary run up. That was the majority of the run up.
it was like
After
I
they
feel
announced
like it was like around the inclusion day. It ended up being like around high 600s, I think. I don't remember what the base was where that started. If it was like at $400. And then obviously it went from, but after inclusion, you saw this steady buying for like 2 months into January, where it went from
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
no, wait,
Yeah.
now I gotta go check.
Yeah.
Wasn't the inclusion date like November 18th?
No, December 20.
Oh, it was
December
December
21. Yeah.
Okay,
December
well, it was
20,
one. Then
21.
you're right.
Yeah.
It was. I have to look back then. So, I thought it was November 18th. Okay. Well, then I stand corrected.
I think that might be the announcement.
Yeah, you're probably right. So yeah, the announcement. I'm just looking at it now. Right, there was a huge run up. Yeah, I'd say about half the run up or a little more was from announcement to inclusion, but then there was still like 3 weeks. So it looked like it topped out.
But super micro went up way more than Tesla did into the announcement, right?
I'm not sure on that. Actually, Tesla like doubled.
Yeah, super micro went up
Super
like
micro didn't
10
double.
times. Are you serious? It went up like 10 times.
No, I'm talking about since the announcement.
And Tesla has some fundamental strength, like Supermicro has not.
Tesla had a much higher valuation relative to earnings than Supermicro at the time.
That's fine, but Tesla's valuations, I mean, even like years later, Tesla's still around that valuation, I don't know.
Yeah, and again,
anyway,
Tesla
so what's you looking to go back in again, or are you just done with that trade?
No, I'm done with it for now. Unless if it pumps up, then I would go back in. That's basically it. If it goes up again above 1,000, for
what do you
sure
think
above.
the stock worth? What do you think the stock is worth?
I don't know. I was just kind of looking at it this morning on what their last 4 quarters they earned, and then trying to assume there'd be some growth to that. Even if you assume the latest quarter they printed, I think $5. Even if you assumed they did a little over $20 in the next 4 quarters, even if I said 25, then their P ratio is 36 on that going forward. That's pretty, but that's still presumptuous to assume that. So, like, this is like a period that I'm not. The current price is not something that makes me super aggressive to short, or definitely I would not. I'm not thinking to buy long either. So it's just in the mushy middle right now. And if it goes back up 20%, then I think that's a more easy short. But if it goes down 30%, then I think it might be willing to go long. And you wait until the next earnings report to get a better insight in terms of how sustained the earnings growth might be.
Did you watch the Nvidia event?
No.
Omar, did you watch it?
Yeah, I actually watched it twice.
Yeah, what did you think of it? Let's see if Wes wants to come up and talk about it too. And I'm hoping Meta will join us. I know he's super busy these days, but maybe he might join us for a few minutes. Go ahead.
Well, the main takeaway is that they launched Blackwell, which is their new GPU architecture, and it looks great. So, I mean, this is the amazing thing that's sort of powering these wave of AI improvements is they come up with a better chip, right? Now, you have even more compute power to throw at training an LLM or training FSD or whatever. So if they're trying to train, for example, FSD 12 or 12.3 or 12.4 or whatever, now with these new Blackwell chips, which I assume Tesla's probably going to buy, they are able to train even faster. And then there's going to be another generation of chips, and they're going to continue to train even faster. So really just looking at what these training data centers look like, just the massive sort of industrial grade GPUs they're developing. This has really been the engine for innovation in these AI models. We kind of just are here on the internet and we see them coming out, but behind the scenes, it's this growth in compute that's really enabled these models to exist. So I think it's a great thing. The rest was kind of a lot of weird sort of corporate stuff. It was weird, like it's such a funny situation with Nvidia right now. And I love Nvidia. I'm a position. I actually just bought a few more shares while we were just in this space. Um, and I think like there's a little bit of sort of silliness going on, like when a company's doing so well, like the stock's doing so well, everybody's kind of like, oh my God, Jensen, like there's, a little bit of sort of blowing things up a little bit. Oh, there's this huge transition to accelerated computing and sort of framing everything this certain way that you kind of just sort of raise your eyebrows at. You can just tell there's a little bit of frothiness there, is what I'm saying. But like behind the sort of excited rhetoric and the hype, there is a business that is actually just growing like crazy. And I look at them and they don't really look expensive given the state of the market right now. So that's why I bought some more, like their multiple basically hasn't expanded at all. It's really been on a forward basis, it's really been primarily driven by earnings growth. So I see the AI trade as really having four phases. So number one is Nvidia, because everybody needs Nvidia to train these AI models. So before you see the models themselves making a lot of money, you see Nvidia making a lot of money because the people making the models need Nvidia to create them. Then level two of the trade is the infrastructure providers. We're talking about our cloud service providers. We're talking about, networking. We're talking about semiconductor companies, data center companies, even electric utilities, the companies that are going to benefit from this massive build out of AI data centers or AI factories, as Jensen likes to say. So presumably your Amazons, your Googles of the world, they're going to be making more money because they're going to be buying these H100s and these Blackwells and all these new chips that keep coming out, and they're going to be selling them out to startups that are VC funded. And so presumably their earnings are going to grow. And the earnings among the infrastructure providers, the cloud service providers and others would probably be greater in aggregate than Nvidia because naturally a cloud service provider isn't going to buy from Nvidia unless they think they can make even more money than what Nvidia is charging them. So Nvidia is charging them $40,000, $50,000. They think they can actually go and rent this out and generate a lot more than that over the lifespan of the data center. Then level three, you've got the actual AI enabled applications. This is where I think Tesla falls. So then you have these AI enabled applications leveraging NVIDIA tech directly in some cases through the infrastructure providers like the CSPs. And you have them training these models and then building features into their products that drive earnings growth in the business. So AI enabled features in the product, for example, with Tesla, using AI, making the car self driving, you could potentially generate 10 times the earnings selling the exact same car. So same amount of work, same amount of cogs to build the car, but now suddenly it's worth, an order of magnitude more conceivably. And we're going to see this across pretty much every field. Lawyers using AI, Hollywood using AI instead of expensive special effects teams. Now you can just, give a Sora prompt, right? And it could just generate the special effect for you, anything you could imagine. So we're really going to see this across the industry, AI enabled applications sort of driving another wave of earnings growth. And then finally, at the end of sort of the transition here, you have the users of these AI applications. So you've got um, people just using these products. For example, let's say someone who runs an office and they're using Microsoft Copilot, which is now built into Office. And they're able to, let's say, answer twice as many emails or write twice as many documents or whatever the work they do, their productivity increases. And so the earnings of their firm increase. So I really see this as sort of a broad based um, set of earnings growth that's really going to reverberate through the economy, that's going to drive increased productivity. Jensen called it a new industrial revolution, which is a little bit hyperbolic, but honestly kind of spot on. I wouldn't, scoff at that characterization. I would probably say maybe that is a fair description of what's happening. So, there was a little bit of sort of corporate PR marketing stuff to kind of laugh and roll your eyes at, but the reality is they're killing it. They're at the top of the game and they've got a new class of GPUs out. All their customers are running to the door to be the first to buy this new set of chips. And they said the sales for the B200 are higher than they've ever seen for any other product, which isn't surprising. AWS and Google Cloud and others running to be the first to get those up in their data centers. So, yeah, I liked what I saw. I think it's going to benefit the industry. I think it's going to benefit Tesla. And at some point the rose-colored glasses will probably come off and this thing won't last forever, but it seems like we may be in the early phases of something that is going to potentially be a major event in economic history, I think.
Machine, what do you have to say about that? Does that make you want to buy Nvidia stock?
I fell asleep. It was so long. No, I'm
Sorry.
good. I mean, I'm gonna wait and see either if there's a correction down, a sell-off, profit taking, and if not, I'll wait till next earnings and make a decision then. But I totally understand just holding the stock for the long term because they have a great trajectory right now. They're really not that highly valued, so there's potential to keep going up. So I mean, as part of a portfolio, I think it makes sense. Versus the negative earnings growth company that you obsess over. I mean, imagine having a spaces where you want to talk about a company that has negative earnings growth year over year, quarter over quarter, and then you're mad when a new company comes and is having massive earnings growth the last year and a half. And you didn't do anything about it. You could have been talking about it for a year and a half, but you were so obsessed with one company, you may need therapy.
I mean,
I
fundamentally,
would
it's a
I
boring
so
product.
I would agree with you if I agreed, like if I agree with Omar's saying, I would agree with what you're saying too. But but I don't agree with what Omar's saying. I think the company is overvalued. I think that market participants are looking at the multiples and both the conclusion that the stock is not overvalued. But if you kind of dig into it and think about the fundamentals and look out a few years, then I think the company is overvalued. So I can't predict an irrational exuberance around the stock ahead of time. But when it does happen, I can talk about it being overvalued, and that's what we're doing. Machine.
What do you think is a fair market value for Nvidia?
Um, a few $100 billion.
You're an asshole.
Why? You asked me a question. I gave you an honest answer.
A few $100 billion?
Yeah. Yeah.
You think their PE ratio should be like 5?
Yes.
I'm gonna go get out my voodoo doll of you and stab you a few times.
Yeah, I think less than 10. Maybe not as low as 5, but less than 10. But I just like that's what I'm trying to say. Right? It's not PE ratio is not the appropriate way to look at this company. The earnings are inflated. There's a temporary demand and supply imbalance. So to value a company based on temporary imbalance is just, I think, short-sighted.
There can be a temporary imbalance, but still a few $100 billion in market cap is.
See, the company was worth a few $100 billion about 6-9 months ago, and you were nowhere to be found, pounding the table about how undervalued it is. So don't come up here and act as if you know it all.
I wasn't paying attention. I admit that thoroughly. I mean, that's kind of dumb, right? I was paying attention. Listen, this stupid space that is focused on one company. You are the leader of this space, and you should have been identifying this company. We talked about AI. We were talking about AI, obviously. You're talking about Chat GPT, and no one's like, "Huh? I think everyone's going to keep buying these Nvidia chips. We should investigate that stock valuation." No, it didn't happen. Okay, that's a big black mark on this space.
Why? This isn't an Nvidia space. It's not a chip space. It's about Tesla.
Should be. Should be.
I mean, you had the opportunity to talk about Nvidia. You didn't bring it up once.
I know, and I hate myself for that.
I mean, when you see Nvidia and their sales are like growing 3x, this is the AI boom. This is what Tesla has been preparing for years, right? Why did they start working on Dojo? Just for shits? No, because they knew that this was going to happen. And guess what? It is actually happening. So this isn't a bad thing. Like I kind of hear people say this a lot, like, "Oh, Nvidia stock's up so much. This just shows how bad Tesla stock is." Or, "Oh, Nvidia's business is growing. Tesla's business isn't growing right now." So this just shows how bad Tesla is. But really, it's just sort of the first wave of the AI trade. First, obviously, infrastructure spending grows. That's necessary to deliver the results at the later stages. But now imagine that Tesla actually has generalized autonomy across the globe. Is it crazy to think that their sales could grow 3x as well? No, it's not. It could grow more than that, right? You could have a car, like I said, producing an order of a magnitude more on the top and bottom line than it is today. So it's, I think, a very dangerous thing to look at this company and their roadmap and say, oh, they're never going to grow again or they're done growing just based on what's happening this quarter. As they continue to send out these updates and a Tesla can drive driverlessly with FSD 12 through a parking lot, you think there's no chance at all that consumers want to go out and buy a self-driving car? And I think all of this negativity about electric cars, it all sort of goes out the window if you're just buying a self-driving car, right? If you're buying a car for FSD and it happens to be electric, then that's great. You'll charge it, you'll learn how to do it because you want FSD. And I think that's sort of an unforeseen demand driver. People talk about the take rate for FSD, but I believe the order rate and the demand for new vehicles in markets that have FSD are going to start to be materially affected as early as potentially Q2.
Look, I agree with you that Nvidia will continue to grow and Tesla will continue to grow. But, Nvidia, you said, grew 3 times, triple their revenues in the last periods. Do you think that's going to continue at that rate going forward? Because that's what this type is priced for.
It could. And there is a little bit of a bubble and bust thing with Nvidia, right? We saw it with crypto, huge burst in people buying these chips for crypto mining. There was a shortage of them. Suddenly, crypto had a value collapse, the bubble popped, and these GPUs weren't worth a lot. And you saw Nvidia crash. The sentiment was very low. At some point, demand for AI training will also stop growing at such a fast rate. But the central sort of disagreement hinges on when that is. Is this a very short-term bubble where they revert very quickly back to a normal state of affairs, let's say within 4 quarters or 8 quarters or maybe even less than that? Or is this actually the start of a sustained wave of spending that lasts 5 years, 10 years? Do people actually keep spending more and more and more on this stuff? And I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, but I lean more towards this actually just being the beginning of a wave of AI infrastructure spending on compute and inference. Just
What do you think
because
is the fair value for Nvidia today?
hmm, um, let's see. I think I'd pay up to maybe 2.5 trillion.
Yeah. So you're buying shares when the upside is only 10%.
I mean, I could see this being at a $4 or $5 trillion market cap, as crazy as that sounds.
All right. Any questions, comments? Please request it either on Tesla, Nvidia, or anything else. We have a couple of questions on YouTube Live. Ken is asking, is Tesla working on AI or is it XAI? What's the interaction between the two companies?
Well, XAI is a company that's an independent startup where the engineers have equity in the company, and I believe X also has some equity in the company. They use Twitter data to train an LLM called Grok. That model is free and released in the open. So Tesla's able to use it, and pretty much anybody else is able to use it for anything that they want. The Tesla team is more focused on building AI features for their products like FSD and building Optimus. And as far as I know, they're not really training their own large language model, but I could see them using Grok or something else in their products, collaborating with the XAI team. I could see XAI being sort of the first to try Dojo, but they are two separate companies at this point. And it's possible you could merge them together at some point in the future if it made sense. But right now, they kind of have different objectives. The Tesla team is very sort of product focused, whereas XAI is sort of trying to push the state of the art forward on LLMs and just release that into the open.
Thank you. And another question from Ranger the God. When Elon said FSD to be really shining bright by late April or early May, does this mean it will reach L4 status by then?
I mean, some would say it's already a level 4 intent system. All you have to do is turn off the nag and the steering wheel, and it's a level 4 system essentially. So, even like a fully driverless car like Waymo doesn't crash. So the SAE levels, I think, don't really make a lot of sense. If we say, do we think it's going to be driverless by then? I doubt it. He was really talking about when it's going to be feature complete. So first you have feature complete. So all the features are there. They could work in theory. I could, in theory, make a video showing me driving around all day, using summon, using auto park, and never actually touching the manual controls. If I got lucky and all the features worked perfectly, I could record a video of that. Then after it's feature complete, then you're just grinding down on reliability, finding all the things that make it not work, that require a takeover, and just grinding down on them until there's nothing left. Only events that are so rare that they're probably never going to happen. And that's essentially what they have to do. So the goal would be April, May feature complete. Let's realistically call that June, July, knowing how these things go. And then in the back half of the year, they would just start grinding down on reliability. And how long that takes, we don't know. It could take a very long time. It could be much faster than we expect. But step one is just getting feature complete. Then we can grind down to driverless reliability. And when it's ready for driverless, it won't be a secret. We'll all be able to run it in our cars. We'll all be able to see. And you'll know that we're ready for driverless, or we're starting to get there when you stop seeing people tweet, "Hey, I had an intervention free drive." And when they start tweeting, "Hey, I had an intervention." And that starts being surprising.
What do you think of Saudi Arabia's plans, $40 billion push into AI, according to New York Times?
I think they're going to waste the money just like they did with the SoftBank Vision Fund. This is what we call the dumb money. They see a theme, everyone's making money, they just throw money at it. Just blow the bubble up 10 times worse. Um, so that's kind of what they did with startups with the Vision Fund. I mean, they're really looking for a way to protect themselves against electrification because obviously oil is the major revenue driver for the government there. The government doesn't even tax their citizens very much. They just use oil revenue. So if the oil revenues were to dry up, it could mean potentially like the king being overthrown and citizens being happy, that kind of stuff. So they're really trying to diversify, get into other things, make the economy bigger than just oil, try and get car factories set up there. But it's not going that great. To be honest, I mean, they're still kind of an oil country. They wasted a lot of money on the Vision Fund, so I think it's more capital for the space. You are seeing these sovereign wealth funds and um, hedge funds, and a lot of people sort of get in and throw capital in the space. So I would suggest maybe taking a stake in Tesla. They can buy less than 5% without a CFIUS review. I think that's the best AI play, honestly, because it's just so overlooked. The sentiment is just so negative. But you're seeing the smart money, the people who understand this stuff. And a lot of them are DMing me and asking me questions about this. The people who understand this stuff are getting ready to start taking a position. And if we get some negative news, if we get some, for example, bad deliveries or bad earnings for the quarter, some of these people are standing by and they're ready to deploy essentially millions of dollars to take a position in this. 500 billion looks expensive potentially if you're looking at the auto business where you're not seeing a lot of growth at the moment. But if you're looking at the AI side of the business, where this thing could be worth 4 or 5 trillion dollars or more potentially, I think in the 2030s, then it looks kind of cheap.
Any questions, comments, please request to speak. Otherwise, we're going to end the space. Any questions, comments, please request to speak. I'm cruising through YouTube Live. We have a poll going on YouTube Live, whether Tesla will get to $200 or $150 per share first. If you'd like to vote your opinion, you may go to the YouTube Live and cast your vote. Oh, Mike, you change your profile picture. Before that, we have limited time for Meta. Let's get Meta's thoughts on NVIDIA events and or Grok being open source. Meta.
I thought the Nvidia event was pretty good, but like Jensen said, it wasn't a rock concert. He's definitely got a lot of like the Steve Jobs presentation.
It looked
charisma.
like a rock concert. They were holding it at a stadium. It was like, damn.
I mean, he came out and said, "This is not a rock concert," which is like, this is not a flamethrower. The only thing I would say is it has the air of, when you overhype things. Because like that there's that moment he comes out and there's all those like robots on the screen and he stands next to them. But from certain angles, it looks like they were actually robots. Obviously, it was just on the screen. And then there's the little Disney robots, and it was like they're not end-to-end trained. It's just like a little like I get that you're painting a picture, but it is what it is.
Are they coming out with their
Chips.
own robot? I didn't watch that section yet. Are they coming out with a humanoid?
They are building a virtual world in which you can train humanoid robots theoretically, and they showed some video clips of them learning how to walk all over the place. But like those worlds have existed for a long time. Like other companies have shown it, like decades ago. So it's obviously there's nuance in the degree to the extreme, but I would say it is an absolute holy grail to build a real world simulator. If you could build a real world simulator that is completely accurate to all of physics and all the nuances of physics, you have basically built the universe, right? And now you can just cheaply build
That's
everything
what
you
they're
need to build.
trying to do, right? With Earth 2. That's what they're trying.
I understand that that's what they're trying. I think that's a very ambitious goal. I'm not banking on that being achieved necessarily, but they have done some good stuff in implementing models. They implemented multimodal models. They did a bunch of different things. It sounds like the analogy that Jensen gave was like TSMC is to NVIDIA. NVIDIA is going to be that to other AI companies. They use a lot of acronyms that are hard for me to follow, but like the NIMS, I think is what he was calling them, which I couldn't tell from the presentation. Maybe one of you knows the answer. Either they were going to saying they were going to build specialized circuitry and hardware, which is not what I heard. I think that's more of what ARM is doing. I think what they were saying is we're going to build software, and you come to our software platform and use that to build your AI. I don't know why they're going to have an advantage in that compared to DeepMind or OpenAI, frankly. So,
Omar, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the NIMs were basically like kind of just Kubernetes plus LLMs. So essentially just giving you sort of a platform to run all these different sort of AI products. They can share your inference cluster and they can talk to each other. So, I mean, it's some kind of like minor orchestration stuff. Basically, just y- I would just sort of simplify it as just sort of extending their software moat, right? All these little things they do, how they're deploying them on NVIDIA, they're just things that make it a little more challenging to move to, say, an AMD cluster or something. Oh, well, they're not going to run our NIMs that are all configured for our NVIDIA cluster.
Meta?
how is that different from Amazon Cloud, Azure, or Google?
I mean, it's essentially just a Kubernetes cluster that just integrates with NVIDIA. So it is probably going to be available on the cloud service providers in some form. Um, but yeah, it's kind of like having your own cloud service in a way, or your own cloud service like experience in your local NVIDIA cluster, because you can just throw
Meta,
up a bunch of workloads.
Yeah,
Meta,
I
have
agree.
you taken a position yet on Nvidia or Supermicro or others?
I think I messaged you when I took the position on Super Micro. I made a really, really bit. No, I'm kidding. It was the tiniest bet ever, but I did make money on it, so it was great. Thank you.
Okay, good. And did yesterday's events make you want to short or write calls or buy puts or whatever on Nvidia more or less?
Less because I realized Jensen's getting really good at the presentations, so I got to wait a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's what Omar said too, I think. I mean,
Oh, sorry, I wasn't here for that.
Omar said that this company will probably. I mean, he's buying shares. It looks like he added to his position. and that he believes that Nvidia can be $4 or $5 trillion in the 2030s. It's going to be up and down, boom and bust. But yeah, he's not recommending shorting or betting against the company. I'm guessing Omar maybe thinks Supermicro is a different story, but I'm not sure.
I'm not too familiar with the company, to be honest.
They do the peripherals. They seem to have a close relationship with Jensen to the point where Jensen showed up at their annual event and was on the stage for like 10, 20 minutes, kind of talking about their history together. But Supermicro's fundamentals are way worse than even Nvidia's. Like Nvidia's fundamentals are actually okay. I just think that the stock is overvalued. Supermicro is just a clear hype bubble kind of thing.
I think the other things to look at is when you look at the B200s versus what you can glean from other industry data, right? So like you don't have clear data, but like you have data about TPU4 estimates, and then you have like they said it's 4 to 5 times, or just like 2, 3 times, whatever improvements. So you can kind of like start figuring out numbers. The key differences are, I think the density of A6 is still higher than these GPUs. And what's I think misleading to people is they'll look at like the bandwidth and the memory is higher in the GPUs, which is true now, but you need more bandwidth and more memory when you're approaching it with a GPU that can be configured because you have more stuff going on to achieve the same stuff, the same throughput. If you're not dynamically changing the way you're running your neural nets on chips a lot, ASICs are always going to win. They're more power efficient and they're easier. So I think this is really just I agree with AI. I think AI is going to continue to grow. I think my position can be narrowed down to I'm more bullish on ASICs than I am on GPUs.
Yeah. I think to summarize it, Nvidia is kind of like Tesla in 2022 right now. You don't want to bet against the company necessarily, but there's a temporary shortage kind of leading to, gross margins and net margins a little higher than they probably should be, and overvaluation, maybe some excitement. But you don't want to bet against the company longer term, maybe slightly overvalued. And then Supermicro is like Rivian.
Yeah, the other thing is like he was showing on stage how the Grace Hopper, data center setup can be. You can easily take out the A100s and H100s and you can stick in a B100. Fine, but why would I be throwing the thing I took out away when I spent money on it and it still works well? So if you're a data center provider, you're going to build more power and all that stuff. So it's nice that they can be interswapped. That is nice. But I don't think you should take away from it that everybody's going to just buy more and replace what they had already purchased. There's no way anybody's doing that.
Okay, Meta, any other thoughts on anything? I know you have to go soon.
No, nothing too crazy. You'd asked about open source and Grok. I think we'd already kind of discussed that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that they're open sourcing Grok. Let's see how it competes against Llama and Gemma.
Okay, Mike.
Thanks, Yaman. So during the keynote, Jensen unveiled the Jetson, what he terms the Jetson Thor autonomous chip, inference chip that will power both humanoid robots and self-driving cars. Curious what Meta, Wes, and/or Omar thinks about the technical specifications of the Jetson Thor inference chip that was unveiled yesterday, and how that could potentially invigorate the alternatives to Tesla's FSD.
Well, the Jetson is a great little board. It has, I think, an ARM CPU and a nice GPU on it. I remember getting a Jetson dev board. Someone gave it to me back in 2018. And so, they've been making this thing for a long time. Tesla, I think, actually used some variant of it as their car computer um, back before they moved to their own chip. So the Jetson thing has existed for a long time. People have been able to use it. This is the latest version. Nothing really earth shattering there. This would really be more for robotics and things like that. The problem is it is kind of expensive. Um, you pay like $500 for one. At higher volumes, you can get down to like 400 or something like that, but they're quite pricey. Then they have a car computer version. They have like this Nvidia Drive platform. So they've been, for example, selling to Mercedes Benz and they've been selling to Lucid and others for their car computer. It's honestly a great car computer if you want to build features that compete with Tesla. Obviously, Tesla's not going to sell you their chip. So who else are you going to use besides Nvidia? Nvidia is what Tesla was using before they could even use their own chips. So I think they're probably going to do very well selling car computers, honestly. Like, what else are you going to build on and try and deliver equivalent features? So they had BYD sign on. I don't know if that's going to be for all their cars or maybe some of the high end models. They showed a few of the high end models. I think the Yang Feng or something. They have some premium models there. But I think it makes sense if you're trying to keep up with Tesla. You need a car computer with powerful inference compute. I mean, your average car out there just has nothing in terms of inference capability. So this is absolutely going to be essential for everybody. I see that as potentially being a growth driver for them. It potentially could be a problem for Mobileye that Nvidia is so hot. But again, this is something that's existed for many years. Companies have been building on top of it. For example, Mercedes, Lucid, and others, and it hasn't been too much of a competitive issue for Tesla that this exists. Like they themselves were using it. But I think a lot of people are kind of confused about what NVIDIA actually does. Like I heard some people say, oh, Tesla's finished, NVIDIA's got their robot or they've got NVIDIA FSD or whatever. But if you look at the keynote, Jensen actually brought on a bunch of different robots. I'm not even sure if the Figure AI robot was on there. But this is what I've been trying to tell people. They're just one of many people trying to solve humanoid robotics, and they have to compete in a pretty wide field. Now, NVIDIA's position on this is sort of like we're not actually going to build it, but we're going to sell you the parts you need to build it. So, for example, we're going to sell you training compute. Then to inference the model, we're going to sell you inference compute. We've got a Jetson board you can put in your robot. We've got a car computer version of that, which you can put in your car. And they also have some software and SDKs. So for example, they have some tools that help you train computer vision models and run it in a safe way in a real-time system on a car. They have a board that's, automotive grade certified, all that. So they give you the hardware and they give you some of the software tooling to help you do what you want to do, but it's more of a sort of some assembly required solution. You're still building it yourself, if that makes sense. Whereas Mobileye with their IQ chips, they're giving you kind of a prepackaged solution where you kind of just, you know, plug it in and then you got Mobileye ADAS on your car. NVIDIA's solution is more of a kind of like batteries not included. We'll give you a lot of what you need to make your solution, but you're essentially still doing the development yourself and it's sort of your own product. So NVIDIA doesn't own, for example, the driving data. BYD would own the driving data and they would own the model, the sort of FSD, so to speak, if they were to train that kind of model or use somebody's model like that. NVIDIA is mostly just selling them the hardware and some SDKs. So I think that's sort of an important thing for people to sort of understand is what their role is in robotics and in autonomy. Now, it is possible that someday in
I
the
see,
future,
Omar.
yeah, it is possible they could say one day,
Wes?
okay, here's an NVIDIA robot or an NVIDIA Robo Taxi, but they haven't announced they're doing anything like that yet. It's mostly just sort of on the infrastructure side.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may. I couldn't find any technical specifications on that Jetson Thor chip. Did I miss it? Did you see any specs on it?
I'm sure they're industry leading. I didn't look at the specs, but I'm sure they're great.
Wes?
Yeah, I didn't see specs either, and I was kind of waiting for those to comment on it. But just, I kind of have a different view than Omar on this, which is odd because I usually agree with him. But there's no other real competitor other than Mobileye if you want to have your car kind of drive itself. You'd have to either make everything from scratch yourself or piecemeal buy things, which isn't really the best way to do things, or buy it turnkey from Mobileye. And then Nvidia does offer kind of a top to bottom, soup to nuts kind of offering where they will actually provide you data as well. They have a cadre of driving data. So they can help you through all of that. We helped develop that with them when I was at Tesla before they announced the Drive kind of platform. So that it is something that they do. So they can help you through the whole thing. And then I do also have comments on the whole Jensen presentation, but I can save that for later.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I thought it was, again, groundbreaking. I don't have a terrible amount of time, but largely he talked about everything from the bottom up, how you would go about getting to, multi-hundred exaflop AI training scale, just by partnering with them. And it's pretty phenomenal that they're able to do this if you already have a current data center that you can literally just yank a unit out of the rack and plop another one in and it just works. Like nothing has to change. Like that is, I just can't believe it. Like if that actually works, then they've done something that is unheard of. Like that's just amazing. So that, and coupled with the massive scale of the Blackwell chip, is just unreal. Like I still want to really understand how that interconnect works between the two chips. That's amazing. The fact that a rack only consumes 120 kilowatts is like, from a chip designer standpoint, that's like nuts. Like I don't think that Google will be able to compete with this design for 2 to 5 years, because 5 years would be like, okay, we have to rewrite everything and then deploy it into production. And we have to match what NVIDIA is going to do in 5 years. Like, I don't even see how they're going to catch up at this point. So I would assert that they have a lead for the next 5 years at least. And I think the valuation, if NVIDIA were to go away, like let's say that they were just wiped off the planet, hypothetically, what would happen? Well, AI training would largely just stop. Has out there, but like if that all went away and you couldn't use it at all, like AI training would largely stop outside of Google's TPUs and a couple of very small players, because Nvidia owns the market. So I would value them closer to like 4 or 5 trillion, as crazy as that sounds, because they are powering the pursuit of AGI with the largest companies on the planet. So I kind of look at their valuations and think about what that looks like in terms of, if they were to go away, what would happen to the valuations of these other companies, and it would kind of tank, because AGI is going to power a whole new level of functionality, and multiples of labor. So I feel like that's important to understand.
Wes, are you buying more after yesterday's event?
I already have as much as I want. I'm still interested in potentially buying more. If I'll potentially buy on dips, or we'll see what happens with the overall market. But I still think it's got a crazy high valuation. I'm much more excited about what Tesla's doing. I like that Nvidia is innovating in their space, and I think it's super cool. I'm just not terribly excited about it. I'm more excited about the higher end layers of autonomous cars.
Mike, what's your position in NVIDIA?
I didn't have a position until late December after After watching the GTC event yesterday, I increased it this morning. After listening to Sam Altman's interview with Lex Fridman yesterday, when he said, in his opinion, of course, and obviously it's biased, he said that compute is, in his opinion, the most valuable commodity going forward in the 21st century. And we will always be compute constrained due to the return on intelligence, the return on investment with building artificial intelligence. So I agree with him, even, of course, though he's biased. He's talking his book, of course. I don't think we're going to see any deceleration, only acceleration over the next 5 years. I agree with Wes. And Nvidia is just innovating and evolving this industry much to a significantly greater extent versus, in my opinion, Google and AMD. So Nvidia, the addressable market, $100 trillion of industry is essentially partnering with Nvidia solutions. So,
Mike, how did you come up with the $100 trillion figure?
well, that's not my my words. That's Jensen mentioned that yesterday.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you agree with Wes, and you entered the position late December, so you're up 100% on your initial position, and you added this morning after yesterday's event. Wes is looking for maybe dips to add more, and Wes believes $4 to $5 trillion valuation, and I think maybe Omar at the 2.5 trillion, but he thinks maybe in the 2030s it can get to 4 to 5 trillion. Interesting discussion. If you like more of this interesting discussion, you may go up at the top of your screens and support the space through Patreon. All right. Wow. It's amazing to have Omar, Wes, and Mike on the same page on one company. Really, it's kind of, outside of Tesla, stunning. A little surprising. Any questions, comments, please request to speak. Wes?
There's more examples of multi-lane roundabouts with, shooting the gap with traffic that have been posted, and they all look good, and it looks solved. I don't have the build yet, but I can't wait to test it. But that, to me, seems like the largest piece that Tesla's been trying to solve for like at least the last 3 years. Elon's tweeted about it a few times, saying they were going deep on roundabouts, and it looks like they've actually solved it now. Obviously, you'd have to do this like 100 times in a row to see that it was truly, solved on the March and 9s. But things are looking really, really good. In fact, I would assert, if anybody has anything other than like signage that's kind of a reproducible problem, please let me know if there's anything else, because I would love to analyze that. I haven't seen anything else that looks like it's an actual, like open hole or gap in the current 12.3 release. I get that Elon talks about shining the builds up. I think what he's referring to is kind of a common software terminology where you shine a build, for general release. We use that all the time at Microsoft, and I used that at Tesla when I was there. We wanted to, make a build pretty and shine it up. So that it was, good enough reliability, and so that anybody anywhere could use it for days on end, and you would never notice any kind of hiccups. You'd never have any type of like slowness or weird UI stuff or, any harshness. any type of invariability. Invariability. I can't even say that. It'd be very stable. So it's I think that's what he's referring to. So, and I hope that refers to this blinking reds. I hope that refers to, handling more warning signs, indication signs, things like that.
Thank you, Wes. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Omar, I saw you posted a update by Cruise. Would you like to talk to us about it?
Well, Cruise obviously has shut down nationwide after their permit was revoked by California. So most of the executives of the company have been fired. The founder and CEO have left the company. And it's really being run by GM's lawyers now. So they're working on getting it back onto the road into Texas. And they want to launch, I think, in Houston or Dallas or something like that, where their permit hasn't been revoked. So they're working towards relaunching in essentially one city. So today they've tweeted, they've come out of the dead, and they said, over the past few months, we've been busy building a better Cruise. We're committed to continuous improvement and keeping you up to date on the changes we're making. Building a better Cruise. Guided by expert third-party reviews, we've been making key changes. Really? What experts are these? Mary Barra? We've welcomed new leadership, including a new chief safety officer. Yeah, that's what you need, a new chief safety officer. You need a new chief engineer, not some bullshit position. Continuing to raise the bar on safety. Safety has always been at our core. We're further elevating our standards to guide all work moving forward. What does that mean? You're elevating your standards. So you're saying they weren't elevated before? Earning back trust. We're committed to earning back trust, working directly with community leaders. Who are these community leaders who are going to make people want to get in one of these cars after seeing the news stories? So this company's basically dead until proven otherwise. I hope they're able to get back on the road, but should they even be on the road? I don't know.
Wes?
So I assume that there's no verdict about the incident. There's no more details. They've come out with this tweet regardless of what's happening there. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I think the woman survived, but I haven't heard any additional updates on that incident.
Like, for instance, the actual video, I mean, it can be redacted, of course, but there's been no further analysis from the video that's been released, I assume, publicly. Because I feel like, I don't know how I would trust that company until that is finalized.
Yeah, that was really the core issue here. It wasn't that it had this crash, which was, kind of a horrific crash where they were on top of someone for 30 minutes, but it was more just about trying to hide it. So they fired all the executives, they fired the CEO. They're going to try and make the case to regulators that it's a changed company culture. The problem is when you fire everyone and have the lawyers take over, how, is that even the same company anymore? Do they have any ability to execute? I would assume their ability to execute is severely diminished with the executive changes we've seen.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
Scott, what's your question?
I was switching gears back to FSD if that's possible. I was on a little late, so hopefully it's not a repeat question. I know with 12.3 out and Alam brought out how doing upgrades or an update every 2 weeks, throughout April. Do we know when, if by chance, is everyone going to be going to 12.3 and then upgrading, or are they some going to be skipped and 12.3 and go to like a 12.4 and go from there, or is there any thought or idea of how that's going to go? And then lastly, when do I get mine? And that's just a joke.
Omar?
Everybody will get 12.3 within the next 2 weeks, and then 12.4 will continue to roll out over the 2-week period.
So you're welcome. How are you?
Good, thanks. How about you guys?
Good. How is the petition doing?
I think we're approaching 13,000. We were at 12.5 earlier today. I haven't checked since.
All right, that's awesome. Congrats, man. What's new today? What's the news of the day?
A few things. I mean, we just saw Steve Aoki. He's a really big DJ, 25 million followers across all social platforms. He just took delivery of a cyber beast. Then Sierra, obviously last night, took delivery of hers. And then interestingly, Jim Cramer defending Elon on CNBC today with his ketamine use, saying, there are many people who would never be brave enough to admit that they take this drug, he said. So, and then lastly, SpaceX COO Gwen Shotwell, and president, she's president too, on the Starlink IPO, she was like, we're not focused on an IPO for Starlink right now, which I think makes sense. She said they're instead aiming to, improve the product, including transmission speeds. I wouldn't expect Starlink to IPO for a few years. And honestly, the longer it goes on, the less and less I think Starlink will ever IPO. I know that's how a lot of early investors will get money out. But if Starlink produces enough cash, maybe SpaceX would just buy back those shares at a higher valuation. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Any questions, comments for the board? Please look closer.
We did see today that also Bentley is not a huge, obviously, auto manufacturer, but they're part of the VW group, and they're pushing back their fully electric plan. They were supposed to be fully electric by 2030. Now it's 2033. This follows the theme, obviously, of other auto manufacturers doing something similar. Mercedes pushed back their all EV strategy too. Audi says they're sticking with theirs. They're also in the VW group, but they say they remain committed to bringing their last vehicle with the combustion engine into market by 2026. I'd be surprised if it was that quick, but if they can do that, props to them.
Steve?
I think you called me, Yaman.
Yep, Stephen.
I have a question for Wes, if he's still available.
Yeah, shoot.
Okay, there's been comments about being compute constrained, and back in the 80s, I worked at IBM, and every year it seemed like we were pulling out a mainframe and putting in a new mainframe because you had faster technology and it took up a smaller footprint. And of course, you had software that was overriding the hardware. And so it was a continuous cycle of being compute constrained. So, and this has been going on for 40 years. So what makes today compute constrained different than it has been for the past 40 years?
Yeah, really good point. I think what is being referred to, and Jensen talked about it, is the ability to get your AI training all running on the same clock step. So that's the compute constrained part, because you want to make your models bigger and bigger, or you want to train a similar sized model faster. So that's the constraint. Does that make sense?
I think we're just trying to do more with the software than the hardware can handle right now. I mean, bottom line.
Yeah, and Jensen talked about this too. The infrastructure to support making these larger data centers work in clock step. That's the limitation. So it's not just the software, it's the hardware too. He talked about some brand new specialized chips, and I can't remember the name of them, but these are chips that help orchestrate all of this connectivity, and that's needed as well. So this is hardware as well to kind of light up this Blackwell. It's like 643 exaflops of clock cycle compute, which is nuts. It literally still blows my mind. But that's what I think Elon is referring to.
Good question, Stephen. Thank you. Sawyer, can you give us a overview of the Megapack news?
From last night, or was there more today?
This morning, Patrick Beam, and also Megapack account posting about Plus Power and Tesla Orbiter team.
Yeah, so just quickly, the one last night was a $40 million installation. Had been finished construction, I think, in November of last year. But Tag Energy, they just turned that on. They said, we're proud to partner again with Tesla. And then I think the post that the Megapack account did, it said, congrats to Plus Power and the Tesla Autobidder team on landing the #1 spot in the Moto Energy ERCOT rankings with Gambit in 2023. I think this basically just means Tesla's with Autobidder had the best real-time energy trading platform, and it performed the best versus the other competitors. I think that's sort of what they're saying. It's a little confusing the way they wrote it. But yeah, Autobidder is just still in its infancy. But we've seen already with some Megapack installations and providers in Australia that the Autobidder platform is proving to be really efficient and really well optimized with the Megapacks, that it's enabling some good profits for those energy providers.
Yeah, I think there's some potential in this post, but I can't really figure out exactly what they're trying to say. But
Yeah,
if Autobidder is actually leading to higher revenues or profit from the system, then that's something I think investors would appreciate.
yeah, and I one other thing is Tesla does have some agreements with, especially Australian providers, where they do revenue or profit splitting. So if the auto bidder system is making money, the energy provider will make a profit, but so does Tesla. So I think this could be definitely a growing business in the long term. It's still sort of in its infancy, but as more larger projects come online, this should start to get pretty interesting.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Otherwise, we're going to end the space. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. Otherwise, we'll end the space.
Weren't we supposed to get Megapack delivery numbers on this Q2 delivery report? I think Drew alluded to that in January.
Yeah, and Zach talked about it too in previous quarters. Yeah, maybe we will. Maybe we will. What do you expect?
I mean, I think Drew said starting Q2, we will add Megapack delivery numbers on the vehicle delivery report, which should come out April 2nd. So I don't know if they mean specific, this is how many Megapacks we sold or installed or delivered, or if they will include some other metric. I'm not sure. Maybe total energy installed or something. Maybe they want to be more vague about it.
We have some new speakers coming up. Jesus, go ahead.
Hey, this is for Sawyer. This DJ guy and then all these movie stars. I mean, are they buying it secondhand? Is Tesla ever gonna cramp down on them? What's going on with all this stuff? I'm sure, were they really up the day we all made deposits? That day, the first day.
So here's what I think is happening, and I'm almost positive this is what is actually happening, is these individuals did not put down pre-orders at the same time most of us did, which was right at 9 p.m. or whenever the pre-orders went live. These people likely did put down pre-orders, but much later. But Tesla is looking at them as essentially free marketing. Tesla is not paying them for this advertising. These all these creators and rich people and big accounts like Kim Kardashian, they're paying full price for these trucks, but Tesla is offering them the opportunity to take delivery now versus later because they're likely farther down the list, because this is great free advertising for them. They're hoping, I'm guessing, it brings more people to Tesla's website because they're like, wow, what's that truck? Let me go learn about it on Tesla's website. And then they go see the Model 3 and the Model Y pricing, and they're hoping that drives more Y and Model 3 sales. I think that's the strategy here. I think it's a good one because it doesn't really cost Tesla anything. I know it probably pisses off some people that pre-ordered really early. But let's say they give away 100, 200 trucks. It's really not the end of the world. Your delivery time is not going to change drastically. This just means that Tesla's just taking a new approach to really, free advertising. So I'm not upset about it, but I could see why some people would be. But I would just look at it as this is just a new approach that Tesla's taking.
Look, if you want to get treated like a celebrity and get bumped up to the front of the line, I can tell you how to do it. All you have to do is go refer 3 people, and they'll bump you up. They'll give you your Cybertruck right away. Chris from Dirty Tesla did it. He's already got his truck. So go refer 3 people.
Cybertruck. I just got
like Kim Kardashian too, and get bumped up the line. But of
There you
course,
go.
we don't know if they're
Or
buying, they're renting, or
you
what.
can either do that, or I heard that if you DM Sawyer a love letter, then you also get the same treatments.
And turning my DMs off now.
Steven?
I won't be DMing Sawyer a love letter, but I actually want to delay the order, so I don't think that's possible. The only reason is because 80,000 is a stretch, or whatever the price is.
I mean, the later you get your delivery, the better the build quality will be anyway. So I wouldn't be too sad about it.
Yeah, you're only going to get a better product for a lower price the longer you wait.
I'm not bummed about it on my end. I'm just waiting for a VIN, but I am pretty stoked that our stock's going to go up because of these celebs.
Zark, you may unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys knew anything about the front bumper cam, anything new going on with that?
No. If anyone's going to know, it's Tesla Scope.
Yeah, just be careful with internet rumors. Someone can have the best source in the world who's really on the team, and something happens, and now nobody wants to buy any of these cars because they're waiting for some change that, for all we know, it could be coming in Q3, it could be coming in Q4, it could be coming in Q2. We don't know. There could be some problem with the supplier. Maybe they got the part and they realized it, doesn't fit on the car or something. So just always take internet stuff with a grain of salt. When it happens, we'll know. I hope they do it. I'm loving the front bumper camera on the Cybertruck. It makes it so easy to park. Even though the Cybertruck doesn't have 3D park assist, it's actually easier to park than my Model S, which does have it, because you just look at the front bumper camera and you can just see exactly where you are. So I hope they do add it to the lineup. I think they probably will eventually, but I have no idea when that change is going to go live.
Yeah, the front camera makes sense on a truck, like a long vehicle, like the Cybertruck that's 224 inches, whereas the Model 3 is only like 186 inches. So they'll probably add it on there, but you probably won't use it much because the car is so small and maneuverable, and the visibility is good enough that you don't really need it.
Steven?
It's a question for Omar since he has the truck.
Just
Apparently,
1 second, Steven.
okay.
Does the scope, do you have something to say on the topic?
Yeah, I'm just basically trying to say, and I also apologize for the loud background, is if you have a reservation, if you have an order, just take delivery. I've still been trying to follow up as much as possible in regards to the park supply, but it's a great vehicle. There's a great chance that at the very least the ambient lights are going to be retrofittable, just because there is the wiring found in every delivered Model S and X since the beginning of the year, as long as the VIN is 2014. It's kind of a shake-up in regard to the bumper camera, but it's only used for parking right now. It's not going to really make too much of an impact on full self-driving. So I'd say just take delivery. You're still getting an incredible vehicle, and if there is any updates, so obviously we'll all try to provide as much as possible. But that's pretty much my main takeaway from that.
Stephen?
Yeah, Sandy Monroe backed into a wall because he was saying the sensors are not that good and a camera would be better. So is that true, Omar? Have you noticed that? Or the backup sensors?
I haven't backed into a wall. I find the cameras to be great. Like, I'm using the cameras for driving like I'm the autopilot computer in some cases. Looking at the front cam, the rear cam, the side cams. When you close the tonneau, you don't even have a rear view mirror. You're looking at the camera. So, I mean, they're going to add 3D Park Assist and stuff like that, definitely. But I think the Cybertruck has great sensing. It is, there are some features missing, like the 3D Park Assist. Normally, it would beep at you and not let you hit something like that. But they're going to ship that as a software update pretty soon, I bet.
Sounds good.
Hey, a question for Omar and Wes. Can Tesla use the front facing camera from Cybertruck, use that data and train the sort of the neural nets and use that sort of model for other vehicles?
I don't see why the front camera couldn't be used for autopilot. So I imagine it could be useful in several ways. It really is a pretty nice view. You can kind of see in the side too a little bit. So I would expect that it would be hooked up to the autopilot computer and used for training as well.
My question was, can, let's say, cars without the camera itself, but can they improve those fleet as well, without the hardware?
Yeah, it's possible. If you can generate a better model that knows exactly where to stop, maybe it could benefit the other cars too.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, before Wes's answer, Wes is up here too. If you enjoy this space available for everybody daily, please consider supporting it via the link at the top of your screens. Patreon.com/value analyst. The link is at the top of your screens. Your support makes this space free and open for everybody. Wes?
Yeah, my consulting fee is very large outside of this space. I agree with Omar. My thought was that cars without the front bumper camera would, through an AI model, be able to remember what's in front and or use, very low power to keep that camera running, to keep monitoring what's in front of the car, so that when you did get back into the car, you could drive away with confidence, knowing that there wasn't anything there or something moved into that space. Then the other thing is that I agree also that the vehicles just aren't big enough. There's a slopey, the hood is more slopey so that you can see much closer in front of the vehicle. So much more easy for vision to extrapolate at a much tighter resolution and tighter tolerances what's in front or around the car. So you're a lot less likely to hit anything in those vehicles. So I don't see that camera is necessary to make the car, do actual smart summon or navigate at very slow speeds.
Meta.
I think they also had a post recently about how they were going to drastically reduce the energy drain from Sentry mode, which speaks to what Wes was saying. If you can just have the camera on the whole time, you're fine.
Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. And thank you, Drew Soul, for the contribution via YouTube Live. Ethan DeVry says, love listening on X, but love that YouTube live stream allows for live chats. And also people pop in later after we start, maybe like half hour, an hour after, and then they can watch 2x speed or faster. Meta?
I have a couple of questions for Wes, if you have time, about the FSD roundabout performance.
Yeah, shoot.
In past few spaces, you've always said what you wanted to see was multi-lane roundabout with lots of traffic. And I think you
Yep.
even said recently, like that's one of the last big cases. Now, if I was to say you have to say FSD is not ready, what are the like next 2 or 3 things that are the reasons why it's not ready?
I think one is these not so corner cases of flashing reds. I find that that's odd that that's not in there yet, but that's definitely one. It doesn't have the ability to park on the side of the road with ease, which it sounds like is getting a lot better. And then it doesn't have the ability to read all signs or it seems like to know all of the kind of intricate road rules. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. You know, not in some states you can't block a thoroughfare in an intersection, or when there's paint on the road that says keep clear, things like that. It looks like it's doing that though, but I'm not seeing it be as consistent as, you know, not breaking laws. So like maybe an easier way to say this was, you know, it can't break laws that are 100% reproducible. And or, you know, even at like even a 1%, you know, so 1 out of 100 times it can't, you know, like make a right on red where there's a sign that says no right on red, or no U-turn, or, you know, things like that. So those would be kind of the top of mind things. Obviously I haven't driven it yet, so I need to drive it because I do test all of these things when I go on my routes, so I'll know a lot more when I'm able to drive it.
Omar and Ameda.
I'm just seeing on X that some people are receiving 12.3 right now. So it looks like there's another wave of the rollout happening.
This looks to be the largest deployment so far.
Awesome. Meta.
I will go check and see if I have the update. But I actually know I think one car does have an update. I just want to say there was a tweet recently from Elon saying that he expects there to be 3 more major releases coming up at a roughly 2-week cadence. And in this space, we kind of figured that out ourselves, right? That they're going on a 2-week cadence. My guess is if you say they're major releases, this is my wish list. I'm not saying this is necessarily what it is, but it'd be great if like the next release dealt with reverse. And so that would allow them to do all the parking lot maneuvers, which often require reversing. And if the second release, or whichever order it comes in, expands the token window so that the memory is past 5 seconds, ideally like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, at which point you could do things on the highway. You wouldn't even need 5-10 minutes for the highway, but I think for the highway you need a lot further of memory to like think through things when you're driving on the highway, so you have a safe stopping distance and you don't like cut people off last minute on exits and stuff like that. I think if those 2 are accomplished, we'd probably get pretty close, and then it'd probably be a bug bash for the kinds of things Wes said, where it's like reproducible illegal things that it's just a matter of like marching the 9s down. Is there anything else you think I'm missing, Wes?
No, that's great, and thank you for reminding me that reverse isn't there yet, and you know, it sounds like that's coming from Ashok's note. I was wondering, my question to you, and no, I don't think you're missing anything else. And I love the idea of doing a bug bash that'd be like the bug bash to end all bug bashes, to get to full autonomy. What you said something about the memory is only like 5 seconds now. Are you knowing that for sure, or is that a guesstimate, or where did you come up with that?
I can't recall exactly when, but there was like release notes that referred to 300 frames, or Green the Only referred to 300 frames, and they shoot at 60 frames per second.
Gotcha. It's interesting. I didn't know it was 60. When I left, it was 37. So if they've bumped it to 60, that's new.
Another way we could look at it is if you look at the hardware 3 bit rate that the hardware can handle, and you look at the fact that it's sampling from 8 cameras, and you know the megapixels of all the cameras, you can kind of reverse your way to, I think it was like, we can do the math, but I think it was just around 5 seconds.
And what do you think is the sweet spot?
I think like they had the patent to turn some of the pixels into cones and some of the pixels into rods by like changing the ISO. You could theoretically do something very similar where you are pulling in the data at the same rate, but you have the model going back and doing deep thought. You see this with sorry. I'm gonna get it wrong. I think it's circle attention, something like that. But it's basically just it's basically a buffer where you go back and forth. They could, I think the sweet spot would be maybe 5 minutes, a minute or two at least. I'm trying to think of like the longest I've ever waited on a highway when I saw an exit ramp and I had to wait behind the cars to not like be an a-hole who gets out of the lane and goes around the cars. So like a reasonable amount of time to wait would probably be like, I don't know, 5 minutes while your car's still making some forward progress. It could probably be down to 2 minutes, but something along those lines, because that would be long enough for the car to know what it was doing and remember what it was doing and why it was doing it and why it's okay to continue waiting. The flashing lights, for example, if those are flashing at about 1 second or 2 seconds, let's say it's even flashing at 1 second on and off, in a 5-second window, you're only getting like 2 or 3 samples. Maybe if you expand that window, it says, oh, this is clearly a flashing light because it's a repeated behavior. So I think as you expand the token window, we've seen this with other models, deep reasoning gets better. So I think they need to do that.
So you think that it's possible or it's probable that the flashing red light issue is due to low memory?
Not low memory, token window, just to be clear. It's not a hardware issue.
Sorry, isn't the token window a function of memory?
Not always. You're correct that if you give it more memory, you can obviously throw more tokens at it. But there's other ways you can synthetically increase the token window.
Okay, why do you think the token window is so small? Maybe I should have asked that question.
I think it was the easiest, largest token window they could support.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because I'm thinking that they just haven't trained on a red that blinks. I just don't think it understands why it would do that and what it means. It doesn't really understand that. Much like it sees these signs, it just doesn't understand them. That's my thought.
Yeah, like consider a very simple example of if you took the same number of frames, let's say you had 300 frames, and you said your last 50 frames, instead of having it be 300 frames, you're gonna have 250 frames in a row, and you're gonna have every other frame. Now you're looking at 350 frames effectively, but you have a fuzzier view. And you can obviously play games like this with which pixels, how far, which cameras, and you could say keep 100 frames from half the cameras and adjust your math and have further view of more cameras. You see how you can kind of like keep playing around with how you adjust the pixels in the token that represent your tokens in your token window.
No, I totally get that. Are you seeing what I'm saying or no?
No, I didn't follow.
Oh, gotcha. So let's just hypothesize that if they've never shown it a blinking red, it may just understand that even though it's seeing some frames without any light on the traffic light and some frames with red, you could see it understanding that sometimes it should stop and sometimes it should not. Because maybe they've trained it on no lights seen on a traffic light, and it understands if the light is there, the actual like physical outline of the light is there, but nothing's actually displayed. What is it supposed to do? It sounds like, or it looks like, it demonstrates that it waits and then goes, but then the red comes back on again and it stops. And so that happens much quicker than 5 seconds. That cycle time is more like a second and a half or shorter. So I just don't think it's been shown this scenario at all. And I don't see how it would extrapolate that given the other demonstration samples that it's been shown. That's my supposition. Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying. So it's not that when you say the token window is 5 seconds, it doesn't mean that it's making decisions 5 seconds at a time or anything like that.
I agree. That's just the buffer. I get it.
Exactly. So I'm just saying if the buffer was longer, the number of blinks would be higher and the probability of it emerging the behavior would be higher.
Right. But I guess maybe final question. Do you think it's been trained on blinking reds? Do you think it has samples of that? Really? Okay. Interesting.
It must,
I
right?
don't
There
think
must be
so.
takeovers at Blinking Reds, and I'm guessing they have that all the takeovers in their, at least in their test set, and they're probably like, okay, well, let's not build anything specific to address this if we know eventually we're just going to expand the token window, and that probably is how you address it.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I wouldn't really like hyperanalyze the blinking red scenario. Like in 12.1, there were all kinds of weird things that were happening. Like, for example, it would stop at a stop sign if it saw a red light up ahead. Then when the light turned green, it would go. So you could sort of like hyperanalyze that and be like, why hasn't it seen that? I mean, it probably had seen some clips, but a sort of edge case scenario like that needs to kind of be overrepresented to get it to understand the difference. And then they just sort of fixed it in the next build. It was just never an issue again. So clearly it was relatively trivial to fix the issue. All they had to do is really just show it more examples of that, and then it worked. And I think with this initial release of 12.3, like we saw this in 12.2, it was much more cautious. And 12.3, I think they're just trying to be very careful with it. So I think more than anything, they're just biasing towards stopping at a red light. So I think the model's programmed when it sees a red light go on, stop. And they just really overemphasize that to make sure there aren't any running red light issues that sort of give this build a bad name when it first comes out. But that's created this undesirable behavior. And by the way, I saw 12.2 and 12.1 handle blinking reds much more naturally. They didn't do what 12.2 is doing. So I think it's kind of like a side effect of them trying to really nail down the red light, because if you identify flashing red lights, but then sometimes you have a false positive and it's really a red light, but you think it's a flashing red, let's say maybe there's some glare from the sun or something that kind of makes it look like the light is flashing, and then you suddenly run into the intersection or something like that. That's what you want to avoid. So I think it's just kind of over biased towards stopping at reds and not recognizing the flashing reds. The behavior you're seeing in 12.2 is almost like when the light turns off, it starts moving, but then it sees the light turn red and it stops. Then after it moves again, but literally like with every blink of the light, it stops and goes. So I'm not dwelling too much on this because I expect it to be trivial to fix and that it would be resolved in 12.4. If it wasn't, then maybe we have to start asking some questions about whether there's some architectural deficiency here. But I see these sort of irregularities of the model being relatively trivial to fix, I think, between 12.3 and 12.4.
But it like you're basically training policies for the dopamine reward system in the vehicle that's trying to learn how to drive. It's kind of like as a human, it's better for you to freak out when you see a rope thinking it's a snake, even though you're going to run into ropes more often, than to get it wrong the one time you see a poisonous snake and think it's a rope. So your brain has the same thing. Like there are times where we as humans freak out thinking something it's not. That's just how neural
I can't hear you now. I can't hear you now. He doesn't mean that. He,
really sort of broaden it up. So I do expect the entire fleet will be moved over before 12.4 comes out in a couple weeks.
Did you guys see Elon's tweet about early May? You think it's going to be really good?
Yeah, I did see it. He responded. I was telling people to like relax and meditate or something, and then he comes and hypes everyone up again.
I thought that was
Well,
hilarious
I think
that
he
you
was
were
just
telling
trolling
everybody to
machine.
chill out, and then he does the opposite.
I think he was trolling machine because he went and talked about hyper exponential. He talked about early May, a release every 2 weeks.
Any questions, comments? 3 people who joined Patreon just now. John, the daily space.
Can you
When
hear
are you
me?
gonna? When are you gonna start supporting the space?
Well, I have to choose. Do I support Troy or the space?
More the
And
merrier.
Troy's a lot more valuable right now.
Okay. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I got a lot of things to say. Number one is then calculus and derivatives. Like this guy has seen a plot of the rate of improvement and then took it into Python, took the derivative and looked at derivative and then assessed that it was still a hyper exponential. There's no way he did that. Do you think a shock did that for him? Do you think someone actually did this work? There's no way anyone did this work. They're not wasting their time on this. And to go through and say, so it doesn't mean the competency of the system, the reliability of the system is necessarily massively going up in that time frame, although it might. Maybe it will.
You wouldn't know though because you don't run it.
Well, besides the point. And number 3, I think I found Meta's GitHub repository. And
what does it look like? What is the contribution there?
Well, I could show you. Hold on one second. Give me 1 second.
No.
Just let me.
No personal identification. Wes.
So Elon mentioned that they keep track of, they have that big screen in the office about miles to critical engagement. This is what I think he means about super exponential. And he's used those words in meetings that I've been in, not to say, but he does think of things this way because that's the only way you're going to solve FSD to get to, billions of miles without an issue. If he's saying that, he means it. So just, all joking aside, like that's not something that I would take lightly.
Machine.
He removed it again. Yeah, unbelievable. Half to have exponential growth. You could just say it's exponential. And if you say hyper exponential, people just aren't going to take you as seriously.
Yaman, just so you're aware, that GitHub machine was trying to post is actually a joke. If you look at it, you'll understand. Just for anybody concerned.
I highly
Go
suggest
ahead,
you go see that GitHub. It's using
Hey, if
state
you
of
have
the art.
children, no one should open any links machine posts ever.
It's using state of the art recurrent neural networks to draw artwork. I don't understand why anyone has a problem with that.
Is that what you hang up in your home as art?
I mean, I just what to say.
Might say that's the most popular pictures that'll be sent on the internet.
I have
I
a
thought you were
cron
busy.
job. I have a cron job that runs every day and commits 10,000 randomly generated lines into a private repository. Makes me look like the most brilliant programmer ever.
AJ,
Repositories show up in
Yeah.
They didn't used to, yeah.
AJ.
I was just going to add hyper exponential. Of course, machine is right. Hyper exponential is a completely I think we shouldn't split too much hair about this because language has become so inflationary on social media that if you don't use the words uber or hyper or whatever, nobody is barely noticing you anymore. I think that's part of the reason.
Thank you to Richard Wessels, along with John Galvin and Dana Kendler and Eswar for joining Patreon. AJ, question for you. I saw you had a couple BYD and Xpound. But
Yeah.
first Omar and then AJ, maybe give us some overview on those. Omar?
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe ask Tesla Scope. It looks like the release notes that a lot of people are receiving who have this FSD 12.3 build number is just saying minor bug fixes. And some people are saying, wait a minute, FSD 12.3 is this 12.3.1? Why do the release notes say, minor bug fixes rather than FSD 12.3?
So there's two very likely possibilities to this. The first is there have been a higher than average amount of failure rates for this update. And just speaking with Green only, it looked like there was a possibility that there was something wrong with the actual update. So there is a small chance, and I doubt this is the case, that anyone who's receiving the update can still install it, but they won't actually get 12.3 immediately. It might have to be updated manually, or they may have to route into the vehicles. I'm not sure. I highly doubt that's the case. What it looks like more so is last year we saw a couple of the release notes being incorrect, where there was that instance where the factory update was incorrectly showing version 12 for the first time, even though those. So I'm thinking it's just a incorrect release notes. Everything kind of has to be manually done. There's no automated process that tells the vehicle what the release notes you get. An employee at Tesla has to manually define that basically based on the vehicle configuration. So I'm assuming that's it. I think those vehicles still should get 12.3, but if they don't, the reason is because of a temporary issue that Tesla's aware of and working on.
The last
Yeah, it looks like according to About Tesla, 1/4 of eligible vehicles on the .30 branch have been upgraded.
Thank you, guys. As a reminder to new speakers, you must stay on mute and wait to be called upon. AJ, would you like to give us a few sentences on BYD Xpeng?
Sure. So maybe we start with Xpeng because it's the most recent one they reported today. And maybe we go back to the last quarter. I mean, Xpeng became quite the sort of the hit because they had this enormous growth in the fourth quarter. And but now things have completely changed. Like in Q4, they reported 60K vehicles, and now today they guided for 21,000. We already know January and February. That means they only expect 9K for March, and so basically sales quarter on quarter would drop by 2/3. And given that there is only 12 days left in Q1, we basically know this is a highly accurate prediction of Xpeng, and they would certainly not that heavily sandbag. So then you have to ask yourself, why the heck did it drop so much? Has a big impact there. You so had Q4 that's quite atypical, and then aside from sort of the delivery outlook for Q1, the positives were that they became, I think, for the first time in 2023 in Q4. Sorry, I need to turn off this. They became gross margin positive, but they're still far away from profitability. They're only at the run rate vehicle. And by all my estimates, I think you have to get to very close or above 300,000 annual vehicle sales to have any chance of sustainable profitability or cash flow positivity.
Yep.
And they're far away from that. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm showing AJ's post, which includes Xbox sales by quarter and a massive drop, quarter-over-quarter drop in sales in Q1 on YouTube Live. Post as well, please. AJ?
Sorry, did you ask something?
Yeah, and a few words on BYD sales as well, if you can.
Okay, yeah. So BYD, again, a quick recap. BYD got, which I can only describe as explosive growth. They were extremely successful in both their BEV lineup, but also in their hybrid lineup. They were really, really beating everything in China in their massive home market. However, when you look at in other markets, they started last year to become more aggressive in, plus this year in particular. So far, the sales traction is, and you guys might remember a couple of weeks ago, there was all this news about BYD sending their own chips, by the way, owned by BYD to Europe to basically send all these vehicles for sale, blah, blah. But right now, there's very low adoption. I calculated for February for all the numbers for which we have BYD sales in Europe only of 0.5, and this covers, I think, most of all big countries. On Thursday, we get from the European regulator, not regulator, but lobbying group, and then I can give even a more sort of detailed picture about this, but it doesn't look good right now. I'm sure they will be selling more because companies, when they try to launch new brands, they always try to get the big vehicle operators like the rental companies, the taxi companies, etc., on board, so they can have vehicles on the road so that average consumer, because typically it's very hard to sell a vehicle to a customer has never seen on the road. It's very automotive 101. And aside from that, even though it's almost past, it's almost April, we still don't have critical numbers for BYD. They early January, they just released the high level numbers, a tiny set of numbers with no detail at all. Q4 in BYD really, and so it's going to be very interesting. But the bad news is, I think they're only going to report sometime around mid-April or something. So we have to wait quite some time to get a picture about their financials. It's the same as with some other Chinese companies. They're very late. We know all their sales, etc., of course, but some critical numbers will only be known late in April, and this is kind of stupid because then they go kind of stay.
On Tesla's, and I'm keeping an eye on your tweets as well. And I also like to thank Richard Wessels and Melissa Abitia on Patreon, and the link is at the top of your screens if you'd like to join the few people who are supporting the space, the other space, so they can be open and free for everybody else. Thank you very much, guys. All right, any questions or comments, please request to speak. Tesla Scope, any other insights on the ongoing rollout of FSD 12.3?
Nothing new. I'm going to be kind of following up on once those installs go through, if those vehicles actual FSD update or not.
Thank you. Omar, how do you think this rollout, expanding rollout of FSD 12.3 is going to impact perception of FSD, Tesla sales, and or Tesla stock in the coming periods?
I think that by the end of the year, most Tesla owners will believe that their Tesla itself without a human. When we see Smart Summon, Auto Park, Tesla doing perfect drives today, parking spot to parking spot without intervention, which I think everyone will experience at least sometime, if not most of the time, as I'm seeing. You start to believe it, right? You see your car moving around driverlessly through the parking lot, navigating people, navigating stop signs, coming up to you with your own eyes. It's not your and you're seeing it drive you around. It is, I think, going to change people's perceptions. I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at what the early reviewers have said. Not everybody has loved everything about it. Some people have said, oh, it's a little slow. They were seeing some of the issues I was seeing with 12.2. There have been issues here and there, but overwhelmingly a positive response. Now, this overwhelmingly positive response, we're going to take it to the rest of the FSD user base. And I mean, these people are losing their minds. Somebody just responded and they said, if I don't see the update when I get home, I'm going to kill myself. And I said, well, don't kill yourself, because imagine if you do it and then right as you're dying, the update notification comes in, how pissed you'd be. But, somebody said, I'm losing sleep. I can't sleep. I got 12.3 and then I wake up and I check my phone and it's not there. And I'm like, wow, are these guys okay? But finally, it's out. People can drive it and then they can sleep again. And sleep is very important. So I think we can all be happy about that.
Yeah,
I like
please no self-dying.
I like that you waited for Machine to leave before you told us about this.
That was perfect, Omar. All right. Man, new patrons keep rolling in today. I love it. Drew Soul just joined as well. That's awesome. And we've been going for more than 2 hours today. Omar, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a really interesting situation with Tesla where there's so much negativity around the auto business, which, okay, maybe it's not growing as fast as it did when the Model 3 and Y were new, but it's still a great business. We're talking about nearly $100 billion in revenue. We're talking about the best selling car in the world. It's electric. Where it's at a place in the market now. We've products like the Cybertruck looking like they're hits. They haven't lost their ability to generate that magic and sell up to pay $100,000 for it. So people are which isn't even doing that bad. It's just not growing as fast as we expected to. And I think growth will pick up again. But meanwhile, there's this thing coming that's going to change the way everybody looks at Tesla and make people realize that the auto business, I mean, as long as they're just making as many cars as they can and getting them out there and letting them serve as a vehicle for FSD, great earnings that are going to make the auto business look like peanuts by comparison. So while everyone's distracted by the auto business and saying, oh, look at how much growth is slowing, and they may be right, there's this other thing happening that nobody's really looking at, but people are starting to see. And it's hard to really see it unless you experience it. So it had to roll out really for this sentiment to be by rollout is happening now. So I think it could be very consequential. And you're starting to see a little bit, I think, in the market reaction this week.
Meta.
do you think that like as pessimistic as the market is on FSD, with the unboxed process, with the new, lower price, if these were automotive analysts and they look at the unboxed process, shouldn't they be able to understand that that would allow them to do many different SKUs, many different kinds of cars? Why is that not being factored in, or is that actually being factored in?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just a little too early at this point. As this is realized, I think the potential's huge, but the market's kind of looking at this right now and thinking BYD's here and Tesla's not here yet. So, yeah, it's tough for auto analysts, I think, to understand the tech side of the business.
But this is not the tech side. This is just using an Ethernet loop, getting off of CAN, unboxing the car allows you to say, theoretically,
But the
one day
thing
you're
is,
like,
Meta,
"Mhm,
there's so little innovation and process change in the auto industry that they don't even have any way to model it just for so long that they don't really even think about these things this way.
got it." Yeah, that's fair. I think my prediction is that at some point, maybe in 2 or 3 years after the unbox process has been out, there could come a time where you go onto Tesla's website and you say, pick one of many of these doors, pick one of many of these roofs, pick one of many of these frunks and trunks, and you could kind of configure it however you want. And there'll be like more of Teslas than there are of any other thing out there because that's how they get to 20 million. Just people are going to want lots of different kinds of cars. And unboxes makes it easy to do.
AJ.
I'd like to make a point on the overall auto industry. Basically, following on what Omar just said, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so here's the thing that apparently not even some yet the pandemic caused a massive boon for the auto industry because vehicle prices went through the roof, etc. I'm not going to go into the detail, but margin increased. They cleared the inventory. It was heydays for auto industry basically, paradoxically, and so the 2022 benefited still from this effect. And now when you look at the year on year looks pretty bad because of that. So right now. So that's why you see, but just looking at Tesla is highly myopic. I can't emphasize this enough because when they're all also coming down, some of them managed to boost the profitability. The stuff I'm not going to get into because I would get too long-winded. But bottom line is, Tesla made 2 billion in positive cash flow in the fourth quarter. When I take all the automakers for which the information is currently available together, add all of them up, they lost 5 billion. And the companies I'm talking about account for 60% of global vehicle sales. I don't have the rest yet because they report later, but I covered it already, and it's crazy. So but nobody talks about it. But this is the elephant in the room. They're all losing money. Tesla still makes 2 billion. Does it look as good as 2022? No, it doesn't. But it's still phenomenally strong performance given what's going on right now. Here I stop.
Thank you, AJ. Any other questions, comments, please request to speak. This space has been going on for 2.5 hours. Retail 12.3 is going wide. I think we have what percent Tesla scope of the fleet, eligible fleet has it now?
What was the question?
What percentage of eligible vehicles have the update 12.3 by now?
We were just under 8% before this rollout, so I'd say with margin error, we're going to be at about 15 to 20% within that range after every vehicle in this wave gets. Note that all legacy vehicles of S and X do not have the update yet, and there is a good portion, about 30% of all hardware 4 vehicles were already moved to the 2024 branch, which doesn't have access yet. So there's still a good margin that are technically should be eligible but don't have.
And it looks like we do have confirmation from somebody who installed the update that it was just some type of they installed with the build number that we've been seeing does in fact have 12.3 in it.
Yeah, and one of my favorite accounts is about Tesla, who is a frequent contributor of this space, and he's tracking the rollouts as well. And he says, I pinned at the top, it's now released to a quarter of the Tesla vehicles on the 2023.44.30 branch, and he daily tweets. And I believe he uses Tesla Scopes and Tesla 5 data. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak.
Exciting
Jimmy?
times.
Yeah, Jimmy.
Hey guys, I just started listening, but so on my car, I just received an update, and that update went through, and then right after that installed, I'm receiving update 2023.44.30.25, which is beta 12. But I had to do an update first, and then the second update came.
Habib?
$1,000 and he's getting FSD beta 12 now. What a deal.
Habib? Yeah, John, it's good. Go ahead.
Cool. I just wanted to jump in real quick. I reopened my phone app. The release notes also refreshed, and it shows V12. Just another data point for you guys.
Awesome. You
Thank you,
finally got
John.
it. Great.
Hey,
Oh,
John,
dude, I feel like I've been like copy pasting the same goddamn I need it text for the last like 10 days on X. Like, I can't wait to try it out. Total believer in it, but 11.4 has had some nagging minor issues in my area, so I really look forward to seeing if those are resolved. And it sounds like a lot of the discourse I've seen says that they are just some lane behavior stuff. So I'm gonna try it out tonight.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
Absolutely.
Hey, John, I just want to say I've been enjoying your pictures of launches, SpaceX launches over the years, and you do great.
And we just had Starship the other day, which was awesome. So looking forward to covering more of that this year and hopefully for many years beyond.
So you'll be taking FSD 12 to photograph Starship launches. We really are living in the future.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'll admit it, I might have hypothetically gotten my fifth strike on the way to Texas last week. Hypothetically done the entire drive from Starbase to Florida with just cruise control. So again, when I hypothetically got it back yesterday, I was hypothetically very relieved to have it again. So
Hey, John, when did you start photographing the launches?
I started early 2015, over 9 years ago now.
That's awesome. What made you start?
I was just kind of bored, really. Didn't have a lot going on. I was a freshman in high school. Didn't have any strong interests or passions or career pursuits, which these days it kind of seems like you're supposed to have by the time you're like 15. um, but I just randomly bought a camera like with the intent to take photos birds, whatever. Even growing up in Florida, like launches weren't something I paid particularly close attention to. The analogy I say is like you grow up north where there's snow, snow is just there. It was kind of like that for me in rockets. But like a month after I bought that camera, there was a launch. I, went to the beach, took pictures of it, and it really just snowballed from there. And I've been shooting launches since.
That's awesome. I'm going through your on X, and if you're all on YouTube Live, you can see the pictures and the videos. I see that you recently went on a flight with Jared Isaacman, right? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So it's in my bio, but just for those who may not know my work, I work with Jared on the Polaris program, so I do the photography. It's a series of human spaceflight missions that he's doing following his 2021 Inspiration 4 mission, which, as I'm sure many of you saw, raised $250 million for St. Jude. So we're furthering that mission of philanthropic spaceflight with the Polaris program. Their first mission, Polaris Dawn, is going to launch here in a few months. And yeah, we get to do a lot of flying. We were fortunate to be in the air for the Starship launch. I posted a quick little video and some photos. Exciting you to do more and more cool stuff.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for coming up to speaker board today. And
go to space for a bit. I appreciate it. I'm
of course, welcome back anytime. And that's probably a good place to end today's space. And thank you very much to Eswar and Dana Chandler and John Galvin and Richard Wessels and Melissa Avitia and Drew Soul for joining Patreon. If you'd like to do so as well, the link is at the top of your screen and also in my bio. Thank you very much, everybody, and I will talk to you next time.